and welcome to another edition of Selectmen's Roundtable. I am joined here this evening by my colleagues Jim Kane, Mo DiPaolo, and John LeBeau, and we just wanted to get together and talk a little bit about what's been going on in the town and with the very busy budget season that we have going on right now. So it's beginning of March, so we're, 2/3 of the way through Finance Committee budget hearings. We had the police and the fire this past Thursday night, and then Saturday was a full day, and then this coming Saturday there'll be a half day for the school committee and then another half day to finish off the municipal departments. Lots to talk about. It's a challenging budget cycle, probably a little bit more challenging than it's been in the past, and so that makes for some difficult conversations about the kinds of services that we're able to continue to offer to residents in light of the demands that we see from people for the things that they would like us to be offering. So that, talk about that for a bit.
One of the observations that I think I've made just about every year is how, unlike in some towns where there's 37 different budget hearings and it's difficult to get to them, this has been the tradition plus the Thursday evening, where everything is laid out in writing. The documents are there. Kevin has now taken it another leap forward electronically. So for anyone who's at all interested, let alone has a concern, a particular area, it's all out there for you. And it couldn't be more easily accessed, backup information obtained, and then it's right there on the schedule when, if you have a particular interest, you can go to a hearing and follow up on the particular issues that might concern you. So I give credit to those who started it years and years ago of doing it on a Saturday, not, as I said, 37 Thursday evenings or whatever, where people are just so busy during the week. So I give this manager credit. I like the refinements that have happened at the initiation of others, not me, since I've been on the board, with the real focus on the school department for a period of time. So it may not always be the easiest process. It may not always yield all of the answers we all want, but in terms of being open, transparent, and available for focus and public discussion, I don't know how you get any better than what people are offered.
No, and in addition to that, I mean, they are public hearings, so occasionally somebody from the public will come if they have an interest, and it's a little more intimate than asking a question at town meeting, because there's like 15 people instead of 240. So there is the opportunity for people to ask questions, and it works when people do have questions, they can ask, and it seems to work out pretty well. But the format hasn't really changed. The same exactly. Routine, and it served us well.
I think it's also great the way Kevin has maintained the same open door policy that Dan had, open document policy. At any time, someone can come in and learn all they want to know about the history of a line item, an effort, and everything behind it. And that is very different than in some towns. We shouldn't kid ourselves. It's open and available for people. And that then leads right into the whole question of town meeting. And aren't we in the season where people have to pull papers or can pull papers to get involved?
Yes, and there are some significant vacancies for town meeting members.
All right.
I was visiting with the town clerk. Anybody who's currently a town meeting member, they receive a paper that if they're up for re-election, and they're able to turn that back into the town clerk by a certain date. I think it was last week, I think the end of last week. So now it's open. If people didn't turn in papers, it leaves some vacancies. So there are vacancies in all precincts, and some of them are 3-year vacancies and some of them are just 1-year vacancies. So if someone's interested in running for town meeting, all they need to do is visit the town clerk's office. You pick up a set of papers, nomination papers. You need to get 10 signatures, 15 to be safe. One of them can be your own, and turn them back in by March 17th, and you get yourself on the ballot.
Right.
And what is it, 5 evenings a year, in all honesty? We're all busy, but you can find a way to do 5 evenings, or even at the annual town meeting, do the first evening where it's the budget. Save yourself from the zoning articles if you can do it, but it's not the commit. Some people think it's a tremendous commitment. It isn't. It's several hours of reading. It's a couple hours of paying attention, and then a few evening meetings. It's again, I think it's a great setting for people to participate.
You know, it was interesting though. I did go up. Typically, you lead the charge on checking on who's running and who's not going to run again. some people need to be reminded because they forget about it, but this year when I went and looked, there were a bunch of people with long-time town meeting members, and I was able to contact a few of them. I had their email addresses. Actually, one had forgotten, and he actually went up and took care of it. But there were other people who said, yeah, I've been doing this for like 25, 30 years. I just think it's enough. It's never enough. Come on in.
Yeah, exactly.
We need your expertise because there is that institutional knowledge. It's like you say, you have that depth. You know, if somebody will get up and say, when we're talking about a zoning thing, and say, yeah, remember what happened with Pyramid Mall? I mean,
Exactly. No, you're right, though.
There's a dying breed there that knew about that kind of stuff. But
Let's not go too fast on the dying.
well, right. But I just say that the complexion of town meeting over the past couple of years has changed because there were long-time people that, was it Jack Dunny who was 50 years? Was he?
Oh, yeah.
Or some other
50
people,
years.
Bob Lutz and some other people?
Yep.
So, anyways, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to get on if people want to do it.
It's a really great way to get involved in your government too. It's just so hands-on, and you
Great.
really do have a say. I mean, some people might say that it's a done deal by the time the warrant gets to town meeting, but it isn't. There have been plenty of examples of changes being made right from the floor, and it's the people's will. And I think that that is just such a wonderful opportunity.
And the other thing is, I like representative town meeting. I think it works. Sometimes it's frustrating that people don't agree with some of the articles, the way we've brought them forward for whatever reason, but it works. The wisdom of town meeting has always been pretty good. But I was reading something, I don't know, it was like 20 years ago. There was something about, it was a customer satisfaction survey that Dan Magato did. If you remember back, he had that they did quite a
Clark
study.
students.
Yeah, the Clark student. And somebody said, "Oh, you've outgrown town meeting. We should be a city and a city council." And I think, no, you don't want it. You know, every once in a while that pops up. You don't want that. You get 7 or 9 councilors sitting up there. They do all the zoning. They do everything. No, I like town meeting the way it is. So you get that big body, and you got a real check that you don't have that in a city council or a town council.
Well, I think that is truly articulated when we have an article that goes 45 minutes of every conceivable option, and then the body votes unanimously. So they've heard it all, and they've chosen to all go in one direction.
But it's fully vetted.
That's my point. No, it's
Right.
good. You get it all out on the floor.
Yep.
That's exactly what you're supposed to do at a town meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I agree, Mo, though it's how we were brought up, so to speak, representative town meeting. I had the opportunity to work in another community where it was open town meeting, and there's no bed of roses there. In fact, the big issue in a lot of the open town meeting towns is quorum.
Yeah.
I don't have, that's wood or artificial wood. We've never had a quorum issue that I can't remember one. When I worked in Princeton, we'd need 75, 80 people. It was a percentage of registered voters.
Yeah.
We're calling people to try to come to the, I mean, obviously, if it's something with a big issue, then you don't have a room that's big enough. But for an annual town meeting or a special that's fairly routine, it's very difficult to get a quorum together. Some communities now have gone to a quorum of 1.
The moderator.
Or a
I know
quorum
of one
or a
recently.
quorum of 0.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you do business with a quorum of 1?
Well, if one person shows up, you're in business. So it's that incentivizes people. Oh, I better go
Exactly.
because they're going to do. There could be 5 people voting on the budget of the town.
It's pretty tricky.
But so yeah, I do like the representative town meeting. The fact that we can provide educational material prior to. But I mean, there are those, and again, I think it's how you start. I mean, there are those who will defend open town meeting to the end.
Yep.
It's an interesting process, but I think this has been very successful to the town, and I agree. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, and it's still working.
And one of the things that was approved at last year's annual town meeting, amongst all the other articles, was money for a study of the police station and the I'll call the town hall complex. Because you can't do one of those buildings without thinking about the others because of the traffic flow. Beth, I know you were doing some work on that.
I was, and that's a really nice segue. Thank you. So, was it $250,000 that
Yeah.
was approved for a feasibility study to look at the police station and the municipal campus? And just in talking to people, I realized that I don't think we've been doing the best job of giving any updates on what's been happening with that because it's a lot of internal work, and so there's not a whole lot to tell. But I think right now it's a great time to let people know what is being done and what we're thinking as a board for where this is going to be going. So currently there is a building committee, there is an architect, and there's also a project manager, and they are working to decide what's going to be needed inside of a new police station. So
I think it's, if you will, not the strict interpretation or definition of a building committee, but
no, right.
there's a group
no
doing the
building
analysis.
no building committee right now. It's just the architect and the project manager working to decide what are the baseline calculations, what are we going to need for space, what's going to be needed for offices. They base it on the number of residents that are in the town and what's needed: conference rooms, locker rooms, cells. So you need a certain number of cells for men, for women, for juveniles, taking all that into account. And then they're also working with town hall department heads and the council on aging director. I know that Keith Baldinger and Angela Snell are two of the town staff that have really been talking about if something's to be done to town hall and the senior center, what does that look like? What's really needed? So again, that private office space is something that's being talked about at the senior center because it doesn't really exist right now. And sometimes they do talk about things that are confidential, whether it's applications for fuel assistance or food assistance or medical things. So they do need some of that space, and then meeting space because they are kind of busting out at the seams at the senior center. So just talking about those kinds of things, and then the architect will come back with just some sort of preliminary design. So the May town meeting is where we'll see an article to establish a building committee.
Right.
So it's very different from what I've seen in my time in town. I haven't gone through a municipal building process. I've only been involved in schools or libraries, and that's so different because there's that state piece of it where you're going for grant money, so you have to meet the certain criteria in the grant, and this is just totally different to me. And so that's why I kind of wanted to understand a little bit more of what goes into it and why aren't we seeing all these building committee meetings the way we did with, say, Beal. And it's because it's
Well, we
by
will.
the town.
Once
Yeah.
the building committee, the formal building committee gets established, they'll be meeting quite often. The interesting thing about this process is the architect who was selected, his specialty is police stations.
Yep.
So he knows how to talk the language of the police department and what they need, and understands, how the flow has to be for, to make that thing efficient. Because now it's at the point where we're way beyond the point that building is just not efficient anymore for the size of the town and the size of the force. Things have changed, and the way that was built, I remember when we did the renovation, did that addition on it, we could only do so much because the way it was built, you couldn't bust open walls and change a lot of stuff around.
What
in
year
it,
was that? Is that the 70s?
I think it was, the station was built in the 70s, and then around 98, the addition was put on, which was a temporary measure 20-something years ago. It's outgrown its capacity. I did, several months ago, I was just chatting with the chief about, what was happening, and, they gotta look out 20 or 30 years when they do this, because it'll be at least 30 years before they get something else anyways, but they're really looking to the future. And one of the big things is the dispatch center, and what's gonna change in that, but it'll all come out, and beyond that, the plan right now is to actually have a town meeting in the fall and have a debt exclusion question for the police station at the presidential election. So we can keep that moving. Hopefully we can keep it moving. because it's still a long lead time, even though it's not a school, but the process is just so long.
Well, we do owe it to people there are some people in town who are much closer to it. Obviously, those who work in it are the closest, but then there's people who go by it every day. It's a nice looking building from the outside, to be honest with you. So unless you know about it, you don't know that it's in need of some level of repair or replacement. So I'm expecting that these guys will do the same level of analysis, excuse me, that we saw most recently, where could Beale be renovated? Could it be add on? So you have these various levels of analysis that get you to an honest and upfront answer. We've also looked at the land around it owned by UMass relative to where would you place a station in an effective way, because it shares a driveway now with people coming in to register their children for Parks and Rec. Is that really what we want in the coming years? So I think it'll be I'm sure with Kevin running this part of it, and then whoever's the chair of the building committee, that will be a thorough, thoughtful approach to it. But excuse me, there's also, I think, an element of history that places the police station in what I think is a genuinely well-deserved, unique position, and that is, for a variety of reasons, the fire stations were dealt with, the library was dealt with, 2 schools were dealt with. And part of that is the simple fact that when an organization comes bearing grant money to pay for a project, it becomes a priority when it's somebody else's money or money from your other pocket as opposed to your local pocket. And I think the police have never played games. And that building is in need of, we need to deal with it. And they've never once played a game relative to complaining or bickering or anything, let alone privately or publicly. And so I think, I'm hoping we can give a good, thorough, clear shot to November and try to deal with this and put our police station in order, as the town has done so well with the other public buildings.
I think you raised a few points there, Jim, that I guess I'd like to touch on a little. You're absolutely right. When there's grant money out there and you never know how long it's going to be out there, if you're in a position to go for it, you go for it. Also, this isn't Shrewsbury specific, but frequently, you're going to need either town meeting action and generally a debt exclusion to do most of these things. So you have to think going into it, how do I get the votes? And folks are most willing to vote for things that are more like open to the community, a school building, a library building where there's a lot of interaction in the public. And it's the quote unquote municipal buildings that often get pushed off to the side or wait. Town halls are usually among the last things that ever get redone. We were very fortunate that the building we're in now is actually funded by the light department. Were it not for that, who knows what we'd be in. We'd still probably be in the old wooden building at the center of town. So even something as relatively inexpensive as a salt shed. How many years did we wait to put up a salt shed, which we know we needed because we had these other needs. So, as you mentioned, I think we need to appreciate the fact that the police department's been they've been patient. As the fire department was, granted, we did that work 10 plus years ago now, but that was identified as a very strong need, and they had to sit back for a while because honestly, if there's discussion about building a school and discussion about building a police station, if you go to the voters often with the police station before the school, some folks are going to say, I'd rather have a school and I'm not going to vote for the police station. So it's time. We're in the right place with Beale. We don't see another, I'll knock on wood again. We don't see another school on the immediate horizon. We've taken care of fire. We've taken care of the library. Now it's time to examine and address the needs of the police department and to also think at the same time of the other 2 buildings on the municipal campus, because obviously the senior center is outward facing. Yes. But, it's hard for it's in my head, it's new. It's hard for me to have that concept that it's been there for 20 years, and obviously programming needs change, populations change, and it is time to look at it. But it feels like it was just yesterday, and that also goes to how good the building looks. buildings. I mean,
Exactly.
they're well kept.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not anything's falling apart, it's just space.
Well, the issue with the senior center is the building's in really good shape. It's held up really well, but programmatic needs have changed.
Exactly.
As the population ages and the different, I mean, 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of discussion about the dementia-friendly programs
Right.
and all of that. And, I mean, obviously it was there, but with people living longer, it's become more and more of an issue. And that's not the only thing. There's just, the senior population is healthier at a senior age. And so they have different needs. And we need to look at that. And the whole focus of senior centers is changing anyways. They're becoming more, I don't want to say a community center, but multi-generational. So there's a lot to look at on that. But obviously the priority is the police station, because policing and everything that they have to do has changed so much over the years.
It used to have lockups, right?
Right.
Whoever came in was thrown in a lockup. The entire standards of how you care for people in lockup, how many times they have to be physically checked or on a video camera.
Yeah.
I mean, it's virtually a full-time focus of someone when someone's in. That in itself is not only an operational challenge, but then it lends itself to the building. And how's the building designed to deal with that? Excuse me.
We have almost 50 sworn officers now, and is it 49 officers?
Yeah, 40, it's in the high 40s.
So a few years ago, I had the opportunity to take a tour of the police station, as I'm sure you all have done as well in your time on the board. And I was really struck by how similar some of the issues that are being faced in the police station are to what we talk about in the schools, where we have people working in spaces that should have been closets, that were once closets, because they're busting out of that building, and just going up to the second floor where the officers have their desks, and the desks are facing each other to take up less space, and there's just, you can tell they're just really squeezed for space for files and materials and equipment. And then the room that they're supposed to be able to relax in is also being used to house files. And so there isn't that space to sit, if you're having a long shift, to just sit down and take a break and eat a meal or something like that. And it's just
And there's recovered property that's stored in that building until, if you've stolen property or whatever, you have to collect until a trial or until, they just find it, nobody claims it, it has to sit there for so long before they can get rid of it. So there were a lot of issues that people don't realize.
because if you don't ever make it past the entryway, you don't
just
ever
don't know.
see what's going on
Right.
behind that door. And so it definitely is
Which is-
something that we need to
Which
do.
is the objective
Right.
of most
Right.
Yeah.
residents.
Definitely. But even the room where I've had to go in before just to file a report when my car had gotten hit, and the room that they take you into to do that work, it's small. You can't imagine if there were other people waiting to do the same thing where they would even go. And we have such a big community now that it's time to have a building that meets the needs of the community that we are.
Yep.
And I also think I wanted to mention, Kevin was telling me that the high school will be paid off. So as we move through with
Right.
this project, looking ahead, by the time we're ready to go to the voters with a police station, we will know that the high school will no longer be on the debt service by the time the police station goes on.
Well, it's when we'll have to do the full borrowing on it, the police station, the high school will be done.
Right. Looking a few years ahead.
Yeah.
Which is really, again, kind of amazing. 20 years, and it's like, whoa, we're there. That project, remember the fight we had to get that building, not as much as Floral, but to get the Floral Street School, the fight in town to convince people that we were gonna have a school population that we now have, because there were only like 2,700, 2,800 kids in the school system at the time. And we're trying to convince people, and that was another one that took about 6 or 8 years.
I was gonna
at
say,
least.
Floral really, there were multiple efforts prior to Floral, dating back, probably 8 to 10 years. All of them failed. Fail. And then the Floral project was approved, and
And right after that,
afterwards, several more were.
the high school and,
Yeah.
because the high school and the renovation of the high school to the middle school were all the same issue. There was one building committee,
Oh, really?
yeah, it's 2 projects, one building committee. I think
Who chaired that?
I was on that
Henry?
one, Henry.
One borrowing?
Henry was
Oh,
one.
one thing? Two different things.
It was, I think the borrowing was split up,
Split,
but
yeah.
it was done as basically, it was two projects, but one right after the other. As soon as we finished one, we went into the other. I think we were on that committee for like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, went on for a while.
But anyways, so.
All
things,
that work that was done before to bring us to the point where we are now, where while you have to do work to get a building project approved, it's at least a task that doesn't seem completely impossible. That if you put forth a project to the voters and they're brought along in a process that's transparent, I think that there's some credibility to the people that work on these things, that we're putting forth a project that we believe to be responsible.
So there'll be a lot of discussion on that after,
Certainly will be.
between town meeting and the fall.
Yeah.
So we've got about 3 more minutes left. Any
Well, I'll give you a little update on
last
Beal.
thoughts?
Beal continues to move along. Thus far, the weather has been with the project. If you go over and ask for a visit, you will see the concrete is poured for the first floor, which is quite an accomplishment.
Entire first floor now?
Just about.
Wow.
In the, we had the final piece of steel placed a couple of cold Friday mornings ago.
Yeah, the coldest day of the
Right,
winter.
pretty
I
much.
think so. But it continues to move ahead at a good pace. It's trending right under budget, so, which is a good place to be at this point. So the challenge continues, but thus far the contractor has lived up to every one of the representations and the commitments made. Their continued cooperation from the Commonwealth has been very good on a variety of aspects. So that's going well. We'll probably ask the building committee to come in April-ish and update the board as to where we stand.
And since it's March, I don't think I'm jinxing us. It hasn't been a snowy winter. We had one big expensive storm,
One more knocking on wood.
but, and something may happen in March or even in early April, but, you'd rather be in the position you're in right now than have
Absolutely.
come out, now be worried, oh my God, are we gonna get more storms in March? So we have capacity and hopefully, we won't use it all.
But for the school, we're out of the ground, the steel's up.
Oh, yeah.
So weather will have less of an impact, and as the floors get put in, especially the ground floor,
Yep.
it's a lot less problematic, so.
What did I say? They had to bring in heaters? Did I hear that?
You have to,
Oh, yeah.
can't-
Heaters, because the
Cool, too
cement
quick.
had to be a
Concrete.
certain, I can't even imagine,
No,
top
it's
of that hill where it's so cold.
No, that's standard now, I don't know how many years ago, 30 years ago, those jobs were closed down in the winter.
exactly.
Maybe the technology's changed, but just the way they
The
do it,
additives to concrete, et cetera.
everything they can do, they just keep going.
And everything, just because this would be an issue if I just heard this, there's core, samples are taken, then cores are taken so that you can test the concrete to meet spec, structurally test it to make sure it's achieved spec. So all of that background, non-sexy work continues to go on, and the proof is in the pudding, and thus far it's, seems to be going well. So hopefully I haven't jinxed us this
So
year.
did you put your name in the concrete anyway?
No, God, no.
No?
I would have wanted to.
I did it all over Spags, my name was all over Spags, and when they
Yeah,
would,
you were a little closer to that project than I might be to this one.
well,
though.
yeah, but I could walk around when nobody's looking, and I'd get a little stick and I write my name.
All right, I'm getting the high sign. We got 10 seconds to go. We got to wrap it up, Mo. No more stories from the past. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.